How does a war, happening thousands of kilometers away, end up bringing a huge nation of over 120 million people to its knees? It seems impossible, right? Well, today we're going to dissect a crisis that really shines a light on just how fragile our superconnected world has become. Okay, so first, let's get our bearings. Ethiopia is nowhere near the Persian Gulf. I mean, we're talking about a 1,500-mile gap, a huge stretch of land and sea between them. And yet, despite that massive distance, when conflict broke out in the Gulf, the shockwaves didn't just, ripple outwards. They crashed directly into Ethiopia's economy. So how is that even possible? Well, the whole story starts in this one tiny but incredibly vital waterway. And this is it, the Strait of Hormuz. You have to understand, this isn't just some channel of water. It is the world's most critical oil choke point. So when military conflict basically shut it down back in February 2026, this wasn't just some regional issue. No, this was a massive shock to the entire global system. We're talking about a quarter of the world's seaborne oil suddenly at risk. And for a country like Ethiopia, that shock wasn't just a problem, it was existential. So the first wave of this crisis, the first domino to fall, it was energy. The most immediate, the most gut-punching consequence of that strait closing was the sudden, totally crippling fuel shortage that slammed into Ethiopia. And, instantly, global oil prices just went through the roof. We're talking 100% jump. Crude oil went from about $70 a barrel to over $140. Now, if you're a country that has to import all its energy, well, this is an absolute catastrophe. And these numbers here, they show you exactly how that global price spike hit the ground in Ethiopia. It's pretty stark. As global prices doubled, the country's daily supply of diesel was literally cut in half. The government was forced to jack up the official price by more than 50%, but even that didn't solve the real problem, which was the fuel just wasn't there to buy. And this is where we see one of the key vulnerabilities for Ethiopia. The country is landlocked. That means 95% of its trade, we're talking everything, especially its fuel, has to come through one single corridor, through the port in Djibouti. So when the ships stop arriving there, it's not just a delay. The entire country's lifeline gets cut, just like that. And the result on the ground was just immediate paralysis. Picture this. Fuel lines stretching for kilometers. People waiting in their cars for 2, even 3 days, just hoping to get some gas. Ride-hailing apps? Gone. Totally unprofitable. And of course, a black market popped up where fuel was selling for 4 times the official price. It's like the country's entire circulatory system just seized up. But the crisis didn't stop at the gas station. That paralysis at the fuel pumps, it started to morph into something way more dangerous. You see, this wasn't just an energy crisis anymore. It was quickly becoming a direct threat to the nation's food supply. Get this. In just 3 months, the price of urea, that's a really critical fertilizer, shot up by a staggering 77%. And the reason why is pretty simple. The same conflict that was messing with the oil supply was also blocking the key ingredient needed to make that fertilizer. And this is what analysts are calling the double shock. It's something a lot of us don't think about, but making modern fertilizer requires a huge amount of energy, specifically natural gas. And since natural gas shipments were also stuck because of the Strait of Hormuz closure, the world was suddenly hit with an energy crisis and an agricultural crisis at the exact same time. And for Ethiopia, the timing was just awful. It could not have been worse. They are Africa's biggest importer of fertilizer, and this massive price spike hit right as the main planting season was kicking off. So farmers were stuck with this impossible choice. Either pay these crazy high prices they just couldn't afford, or plant with little to no fertilizer, which they knew would mean a disastrously small harvest. And the potential human cost here is just staggering. We're talking about 45 million people. That's the number the World Food Program warned could be pushed into severe hunger across the region if this went on. Think about that. A conflict thousands of miles away was now threatening to trigger a massive famine. Okay, but the shocks just kept coming. The third wave of this crisis slammed into a vital economic safety net, something that millions of Ethiopian families rely on to survive, and that's remittances. Now, you might see that number, 5% of GDP, and think it doesn't sound like a lot. But for a developing economy like Ethiopia's, it is absolutely massive. It's a critical source of foreign currency. The money that Ethiopians working abroad, especially in the Gulf states, send home, it's not just extra cash. It is a lifeline for millions. So as the war started to shake the economies in the Gulf, all those jobs were suddenly in danger. And this created a really concentrated shock back home. Here's why. An incredible 94% of the migrant workers coming back from a place like Saudi Arabia are from just 3 specific regions: Amhara, Tigray, and Oromia. And the terrible irony is, these are already the most unstable, conflict-ridden parts of the country. And this quote, man, it really gets to the heart of the human tragedy here. You see, for a lot of these migrant workers, there's this thing called the kafala system, which basically ties their legal right to be in the country to their employer. In normal times, it's controversial, but in a war zone, it becomes a trap. They literally can't leave. They're not included in any safety plans, and they face incredible exploitation, all while their families back home are suddenly cut off from the money they desperately need. And the fallout wasn't just economic. The chaos from the war started to completely rewrite the security map of the entire region. This brings us to the 4th and final wave of the crisis, what analysts call a security spillover. And out of all this chaos, a really strange and dangerous partnership started to form. On one side, you've got the Houthis in Yemen. They're backed by Iran and are Shia. And on the other side, you have al-Shabaab in Somalia, who are hardcore Sunni fighters connected to al-Qaeda. I mean, ideologically, these two groups should be mortal enemies. But it turns out practicality won out over ideology. Both groups realized they had a shared interest in kicking out Western influence, controlling those valuable sea routes, and, of course, making money off the chaos. We even have reports confirming that Iran started helping move advanced weapons like drones from the Houthis over to al-Shabaab. And just like that, a local problem became a much bigger regional threat. All right, so let's pull back for a second and look at the big picture. What does all of this actually mean? Well, what we've just walked through is the anatomy of a modern systemic shock. It's like we've peeled back the cover and seen the hidden wiring that connects our entire world. This quote from our source material really just nails it. The whole idea of a crisis being local is pretty much a thing of the past. One single point of failure, one choke point, can set off a chain reaction that spreads across the globe. And here is the most important thing to take away from all this. What happened to Ethiopia wasn't 4 separate crises. It was one single shock that cascaded through the system like a virus. It went from the fuel pumps to the farm fields to family bank accounts and finally to regional security. That right there, that's the new reality of how these things spread. Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. In a world that is this tightly connected, where one broken link in the chain can unravel everything on the other side of the planet, is any war anywhere ever truly local anymore?